Hey everyone, how's it going? Coming to you with another knife review, and this one is on another, now discontinued and slightly harder to find knife. Why am I doing reviews on knives like this? Well, it's very simple, if I'm being honest. I feel like just because a knife is older and out of production doesn't mean you won't still stumble across it in forum posts or on old YouTube videos, and if you see the knife briefly and don't get a lot of information on it, you may still want to buy that knife. And when a knife is discontinued and harder to get, it obviously becomes more expensive. So knowing if it's worth the money or not is actually even more important, in my opinion, with an out of production knife for a collector's sense. I like going back and finding knives that are no longer produced and adding them to my collection. I feel like they represent the history of the hobby, and it's kind of fun to bring them in and talk about them. Now, I plan to do a video on this as well. This is the Navy K502, now also long discontinued, and it's a pretty interesting damn knife. So I'm going to review this as well at some point. And I feel like there is, a reason for it. It's not just kind of showing off obsolete product. It's letting you guys know if these older products are actually still holding up and still worth the money if you come across them. So yeah, let's jump into my review on the CRKT 6022 Contrail. Don't have the packaging for this. This is a long discontinued knife, and I bought this used, so unfortunately I don't have the box. It was just an old school brown CRKT box from what I know anyways, so just Google pictures of old CRKT knives and look at the packaging they came in. It's basically the same thing. So we have a 2 7/8 inch flat ground drop point blade here, and what's most interesting about this blade to me is the steel it's made out of. This is Z60 CDV 14. And if that doesn't sound familiar, then I'm not surprised. It's a pretty obscure European steel that doesn't get used anymore, or at least not very often. Not in knives that I'm aware of. And doing my own research on it through websites like Z Knives, I was able to find that it's somewhat similar in chemical composition to Japanese AUS 8. And in my own testing and use of this knife, that holds true for the most part. I have found that this is just a bit softer than AUS 8. It needs sharpened a tiny bit more, at least in my experience. But it also outperforms it in rust resistance in my experience. So it's a very small trade-off to make. I'll happily take a more rust-resistant knife for just slightly less edge retention. And it's really not a noticeable gap in edge retention. It's just, it is there if you're looking for it. Satin finish on this. You can see the scratches from poor sharpening jobs on the previous owner's part. I don't mind that. I feel like it gives the knife some character. After all these years, the tip, if I bring this in, is a little rounded at this point, but still gets the job done quite well. There's a close-up on the blade finish, very traditional satin style. You can see the machining lines there. Now, if I flip this over, you can really see the quality of that steel, or perhaps the lack thereof on the polishing of it. It's a little rough. Maybe I can get the camera to focus on that. There you go. You can see just a little bit rough on that spine there. Now, in terms of deployment and lockup, this thing deploys very fast via dual thumb studs. And there's the design of those thumb studs. Pretty unique. I don't really see thumb studs like this anymore. They're kind of a cylindrical design with a horizontal jimping cut into them. But they provide excellent traction, and the knife comes out quickly. It locks up really solid. There's no play on this up and down, no play side to side, and we could easily adjust that pivot point if we needed to. It is a liner lock design, and after all these years, it still has a very nice early engagement on that liner lock. I think I forgot to mention the blade performance, by the way, in terms of cutting. It's a pretty good slicer. It's not an amazing slicer. It's not a bad slicer. It's a pretty good slicer. It will get the job done very adequately. However, don't expect this to laser cut through things. It's just a little thick, mainly on that edge, for it to actually do so, unfortunately. Not bad, but not amazing. All right. Centering on this knife, you can see, definitely lists toward that left-hand side. Not rubbing the liner, though. This was about a $25 or so knife at the time, and centering wasn't super perfect on knives or budget knives of this era. So, not a huge issue. One thing I do like about the liner lock, by the way, is it is a nested liner lock, meaning that the liner is just a portion of steel that has been cut and then placed inside of a milled channel inside of that G10 handle. So there's really not a lot of weight added by having the liner lock. Speaking of the handle, it is G10, as I just mentioned, 3 7/8 inch long, blue and black G10 grip on this is actually still pretty good even after all these years. So I imagine when this was new, this was hyper aggressive stuff because it still has a really good texture today. I love that blue and black contrast. I love seeing color on knife handles because when you're just looking at black and satin, black on black, black on satin, it gets boring really quickly. So I like seeing this. In terms of ergonomics, the knife is also pretty comfortable. The corners are just slightly sharp. I can kind of feel the fat of my fingers coming inside of the, or in between the scales, and it's not exactly smooth in there. But overall, it's pretty decent ergonomically, and that jimping is damn effective. I mean, that is some really sharp cut jimping that does an excellent job of locking in your thumb. We do have a lanyard hole here, which is very large and could easily accommodate 550 cord, but it's pointless because the knife only carries right hand tip down, meaning that you're not going to be able to really attach a lanyard very effectively because the lanyard will be buried in your pocket. Clip design is a little flared up towards the end, a little more than I'd like, so there is a risk of this snagging on materials like seat belts and car doors. And we don't have a ton of clearance here for thicker pants, but it does attach to jeans well enough and has pretty good tension. Here's how the knife is going to ride in your pocket. Just bring this in, show this off. You'll have about that much exposed from the pocket. I personally love having about that much out of the pocket. It gives me something to grab onto more easily. But I know many folks today prefer the loop over deep carry clips, so you may very well hate this design. By the way, this design is a Jim Hammond design, in case anyone was curious. Jim Hammond, at least at one point in time, pretty well-known knife maker and knife designer. So, yeah, this is one of his designs. We also have a little bit of jimping here on the G10, also very aggressive and very effective stuff right there, so it provides excellent grip. If you had to put this in kind of a, not reverse grip, because I'm not talking like this, but if you had to hold it with the blade towards yourself for carving, you could easily grab hold of that and get really good control on that blade. The weight on this thing is incredibly light. I mean, barely exists light. We're talking 1.9 ounces light, which is outstanding for a blade this size. If you are weight conscious, this thing has you covered. It is extremely light. You really don't even notice that you're carrying it on you. If you love light knives, you'll love that. If you hate light knives, you'll hate that. Really all comes down to personal preference. I carry light knives. I carry heavy knives. I do generally lean towards lighter weight knives, however. There's the stamping on the blade, 6022 Italy. This is an Italian-made knife. So for anyone out there who hates Chinese and Taiwanese produced blades for whatever ridiculous reason, this is not made in China or Taiwan. So, you know, you can buy this with comfort, and you can buy this knowing that it's made in another country by different people for whatever that's worth to you. And I don't mean to sound condescending, but I do think it's ridiculous when people get caught up in the politics of the whole knife scene. It's a hobby. Enjoy it as a hobby. If it becomes too serious, it becomes work. And even as a reviewer, to me, this literally is work. I still keep it primarily a hobby to keep things from being too serious or burning out on it. So, all in all, it's a pretty interesting little knife. I paid $28 for mine, and I'm very happy with the price I paid. That said, looking on eBay before the video, people are asking some ridiculous prices. There's listings for like $109, and it's just, I wouldn't pay that, guys. Obviously, I wouldn't pay that. The fit and finish isn't there at that price point. The steel isn't there at that price point. The options are just not there at that price point. So, if you're looking to pick this up, I'd say try to spend somewhere closer to that, maybe 40 to 60 range. Even at 40 to 60 bucks, there are much better knives now. But you'd be buying this for the history of the hobby. So I think it's worth preserving the hobby at that price alone. In case I forgot to mention, we're running on Teflon washers in that pivot system, by the way. So nothing groundbreaking there. So that has been my review on the CRKT 6022 Contrail, an interesting, now long discontinued knife from Columbia River Knife and Tool. Honestly, very happy to have it. I love picking up these obscure out-of-production knives, and, in case you were one of, 3 people in the world who are looking for information on the Contrail, maybe this has helped you out, so. Hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, peace, and take care. I will see you later.